Good afternoon, good evening or good morning depending on your time zone, and welcome to the studio this evening. So tonight I'm going to be cleaning up this back part of the relief carving, bring it down to the line that I want to carve to and smooth it out and make it flat. So without further ado, as they say, I shall get on with it. And I will turn that down a little bit as well. That was a bit loud. Right. So using a large chisel now, which will make getting it flat a lot easier. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll get it level, it just says it'll get it flat. As I get closer down to the level that I want, I have to be really careful about not tearing the wood surface, otherwise I'll end up with a surface I don't like. It can also be quite difficult at this point to stop this. This is quite a large chisel, so it can actually be quite easily pushed offline as well because of that. So I do have to be a little bit gentle with the cuts. And a little bit later on, what I will do is actually use this chisel upside down to help me flatten off this baseboard as well. If I use it upside down, the whole of this back is flat, so it will help getting level. Okay, this is actually quite a long way off, so I'm going to use this a little bit roughly and take some fairly large chunks off. So I'm actually got half a centimetre off the line that I actually want to be at there. And so there's no point in gently working my way down to that sort of level, it'll just take too long. and actually won't serve any purpose to be particularly gentle. By gentle I mean take very fine slivers off. Okay, still a long way to go. Now carving like this, well carving at all, does take quite a bit of effort. It takes quite a lot of muscle control more than anything, so it actually can be quite tiring to do. You are really concentrating on a lot of fine muscle movement to do this, and also keeping control of the blade. These chisels are really sharp, so it's not something you want to lose control of. You don't want it shooting all over the desk. Now with this big blade, sometimes I use it in a way which is a bit like a knife rather than a chisel. Chisels you push, knives you slice, and you can actually do a sort of a combination, which helps when you want to be shaving the wood fairly closely. As the slicing motion makes the wood easier to cut. Pussycat's knocking things off again. You see me looking around the side. What I'm actually looking at is I've got a line all the way around the outside at the same height. And that's the height I want to bring the surface of this wood down to. So I'm just keep checking it to see how far I've got to go. I don't want to over cut, because then I've got to go around all the way around again and cut everything down to the same level. In a minute I'm going to switch to the small chisel and go around the inside edge as well, so I cut all this fluff off. Okay, at this bottom edge here we're almost at the right level. Yep. So now I need to work a little bit more on flattening it. Be very careful that the chisel doesn't twist as I'm trying this, because then it will dig in. If it digs in, it won't be flat. Okay, let's get rid of some of that fluff. Some of this just needs a stop cut, which I could have done with some of it with the big chisel, but some of it that would mark the surface, so a small one I can get in a lot more easily to do a stop cut in the appropriate place. As always, make sure I cut those off. I don't want to rip them off because that would potentially damage the wood surface. At this point I don't want to dig too deep into this base because I'll create a shadow line which I may not necessarily want to be there. It'd be like outlining a photograph with a black felt tip pen. It will stand out quite a bit. So all I want to do is just cut this waste wood off and not actually create a stop cut deep down into the base. Okay, so I've got rid of some of that waste wood and switch back to the big chisel now. And as you run this chisel over the top, you can actually feel the bumps in the wood, and what will happen is the chisel will catch them if you let it, like there, and then you can therefore shave the bump away. I can still feel there's one there, but I'll deal with that a little bit later. Yeah, we're still a little bit high, so I'm not too worried at this moment in time, but let's take a little bit more of a chunk off. Okay, that's about the edge there. So let's take this one down the same. Again, just light shaving. I don't want to dig into the wood too much. And then carving on to the edge of wood is always difficult because you can't always get exactly the right position. So I'm going to take it really gentle. What I should do actually is turn the chisel around and just carve off the piece of wood. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. There's a lot more control carving off than you have carving onto the wood. Does mean I'm going to get wood all over the floor, but that's nothing a vacuum cleaner won't fix. Okay, on this side here, I am creating a beveled edge at the moment. It's kind of useful in two ways. One is it helps protect the edge as you do carve off it, but it also gives me the edge point. So now what I've got to do is keep the chisel so it doesn't dig into that edge. Now that's a little bit more challenging than it sounds, and I'm not as good as it is I should be, but that's just practice. And now it's down to shaving the wood, keeping the chisel as flat as possible. So that I don't create dips and rises. As I mentioned earlier, I'm using it a little bit like a knife, moving the chisel to one side. It means it cuts through the wood easier. And I want to use as little pressure as I can doing this, because that is how you tend to dig in. If you use too much pressure, it's easy to dig in, and if you dig in, of course, I've then got to lower everything to make the levels right. Now then, just in here at the back I can see I've got a slant upwards, so I'm just working to remove some of that. That is actually one of the is a hard part about flat carving on especially the backgrounds. As you get towards the centre of the wood you do tend to come up, unless of course you're a good carver, I suppose, or you've got a lot of practice. And straightening that out is the skill that needs to be learnt. And I guess one way of learning that is if you've got enough spare wood, you can just take a piece of wood and literally just carve the top of it completely flat, and that way you'll get to practice quite a lot to try and keep it flat. That's not too bad, it's still a little high. So switch out the chisel again. Carving, the finished piece is it should be tactile, you should be able to feel it, and that's when you can feel all the bumps and the rough pieces, so taking your time to make sure things are cut well pays off at that end when you run your finger over the wood and it feels nice and smooth. Now I don't sand the pieces down afterwards unless I can help it, because when you sand it tends to close up, well, it tends to both close and open the pores of the wood. It affects the surface texture and it doesn't feel the same, and I happen to like the feel of the wood, so when you cut it using a sharp chisel it's really smooth if you cut it correctly, and you don't need to sand basically, so that's what I'm aiming to do. I just turn the chisel over and I'm holding it flat against the wood, so it should pick up any really high spots. Won't deal with any of the low spots, but it will deal with any bumps. So with a sharp chisel you can literally shave this wood thinner than a piece of paper. that's still high there, and there's a bump there. So in practice, sometimes carving a flat background like this can actually be harder than carving the rest of the piece. Just because of the precision that's needed to get a flat surface. I know that probably sounds counterintuitive, that the background will be harder, but if you make a sort of a nick on a feather, it might look natural. You make a nick on the back here and it'll stand out. Okay, switch chisels. Similar to the big chisel, you can turn this little flat one over to try and get a flat surface, but the thing you've got to be a little bit careful of is it will follow curves, will this, just because it's thin enough to drop into the dips. Switch again back to the big one. And also, one of the things you get with using a small chisel is you get lots of small ridges sometimes, as I've got here, so I'm now going to need to smooth those out. I've got a dip in there now. So I did dig a little bit too far in with that small chisel. Now, this is the wrong angle to cut this piece of wood out, but I need to do it to get the edge I was after just there. So I was taking it really slowly and making sure I sliced the wood. I couldn't push the chisel because it would have roughened up the wood surface because I'd have been cutting in the wrong direction. But I needed to carve off the piece of wood. So I was doing it using it like a knife, slicing sideways. And as long as you cut sideways, then the wood will stay smooth. Which is the surface texture I'm after. Yeah, it's gone rough. Luckily, I have a little bit of wood spare. Yep. Right, I've almost got rid of that, but not quite. that'll do. Now with an expert carver doing this, and I'm not, what they can do is they can cut that back surface, run the finger over it, tell whatever, you know, look at it, and you can take a straight edge and you can put a straight edge on there and it'll be flat. And you see there's some of the skills that people have been able to practice over the years, and actually, you know, the expert carvers. It's absolutely amazing what they can do with a chisel. Let's give this chisel a little bit of a sharpen up. Gotta make sure I keep an even pressure on the blade across its width doing this. Yep, you can see the sharp edge of that. Okay, that's getting a lot flatter now, and it's almost down at the right sort of level. I've got some work to do around here, but I'm going to take these feathers or fluffy bits off here first. Yeah. Right, okay, so that's still a bit high there. But it's not bad, it's not too bad, so I'll just start and bring that lower and then smooth it out a bit more. Now I can feel a cut in there, a dip and a cut, which I want to get rid of. And the only way to get rid of a dip is actually to cut the high spots around it away, which is what I'm working on now. And that can actually, as it is doing here, mean I've got to come back a fair bit of distance. Okay, so created a bevel on that edge to take it down to the mark that I want, and I can still feel the bevel there, so this centre portion is still not cut down far enough yet. I've got to be careful, I don't want to take too great big a chunk out of that, because then it will just make the problem even worse. That's close along that edge, so that bit in the centre's off, but we'll work our way into the centre. So all the time here trying to make sure I keep this blade flat and level. So that I take out all the bumps. Trying to make sure I do long cuts, because long cuts will tend to be smoother than short ones. I also have to be really careful to try and maintain the same angle on the blade as I cut, otherwise it will tend to move up and down. And it's that up and down movement that creates the bumps and hills and troughs in the wood. Okay, let's cut that big piece off. There we go. Still got a little bit of a bevel on the edge, but it's a lot closer now. So by holding the blade like this, I'm almost using it like a plane, a wood plane that is. But I have to make sure I hold it really flat when I do that. And also make sure that no, Junior, you can't come on here. You're going to sit on the keyboard, aren't you? So anything could happen at this point. So if the stream suddenly goes off, it's a cat. That's done that. Okay, I can see from the shininess of the wood that I've still got a little bit to go to get rid of the chamfer at this side here. And that's what I've just done there. A little bit more. Okay, that edge is fine. So now I have to transfer that edge further in. At this stage I don't want to use the little chisel there to pull off or to cut pieces. I want to use the big one to make sure I keep things flat. Well, this pussycat that's next to me is actually laid down on the keyboard, tucked his paws under, and hopefully he's not actually putting enough pressure on any key to actually press it. He is, however, intently watching what I'm doing. You think cats can learn how to carve? Sometimes when they stick their claws in you, it certainly feels like they're trying. Normally, actually, one of the things you can do, I'm using a flat chisel here, or a straight chisel. You can actually use skew chisels to do this, because a skew chisel means you can push forward but it slices, which is kind of what I'm doing by holding this slightly sideways, and it has a similar effect. The only thing is the only skew chisel I've got is quite small, so I don't want to use it for this particular purpose, but that's one of the as you do a lot of carving, you'll tend to build up chisels that do specific things, like for example a large skew chisel to do this sort of work with, so at least an inch blade perhaps. And you tend to build them up as you go along, but as one of these chisels is and just the blade that is something like about 15 UK pounds to buy. I don't want to be getting too many, certainly not at the moment, so I can manage without it by sort of, I suppose in a way, misusing this chisel very slightly. I'm not misusing it in the way that's going to sort of damage the chisel. I'm misusing it in the way of that's not how or what it was designed for. Something just beeped and I don't know what it was. Some ways it might be easy to, in large areas like this, to do a scalloped cut with a gouge and just basically have a very rough scalloped background. That saves all this problem of trying to do this really smoothly. But if you take the easy way out, sometimes you don't learn as much. And since this is partly developing skill, I shall carry on doing this. We've got a slight dip there, and then it comes up. You can tell quite a lot with your fingers. If you just run them over the wood, you can feel dents. You can feel where the wood rises up, and you can sometimes feel where it's at the wrong angle. Well, that's a lot harder to do. I can do it sometimes, but not all the time. I can't do it consistently. So I can feel that's raising up, and this bit of wood's thicker than this bit, but not, couldn't tell you how much, and I can feel a couple of ridges in there. So if your wood's flat and you hold the chisel flat and you move towards something, if that's something you're moving towards is higher, like that, it will actually cut into it. But it really relies, for this to work, it really relies on the chisel being flat on the wood. But one of the things you can end up doing is still cutting on the slope, because something can be flat but not level. Right, let's cut that extra off there. Okay, still a bit more work to do around there, but mostly that's reasonably okay, or close enough. I may do a little bit. There's a bit around there, so I'll need to do that, get rid of that roughness there, but we'll work on that I think tomorrow. I think for today I've had enough doing this. It's a little warm here in the studio, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time cleaning up all this wood shavings, and then get myself a nice cool drink. So what I'm going to do is say thank you everybody that's watching at the moment whilst I put my tools away. I will point out the advert in the bottom left there. Take a look at the shop. All the items that you've been, well, all the jewellery items that you've been seeing on the photographs on the left hand side of the screen are all available in the shop to purchase. All specially made for just you. They're not available from stock, I'm afraid. Lol kid lol and Nakmui, good evening. This moment in time I wish I was cool because I'm feeling rather warm. It's quite hard work doing this, and it's a little bit warm here in the studio, but unfortunately I'm packing up. And that's the pussycat who's asleep on the keyboard. Well, he's not asleep, but he's leaning on the keyboard. He's curled up on the keyboard, so he just put the stream into doing all sorts of stuff there. Don't know quite what he's doing. I'll have to move him off the keyboard in a minute, but I was just going to say thank you everybody that's watching. I hope to be on again tomorrow night, but I have a job interview tomorrow afternoon, so I don't quite know whether I'll feel like streaming tomorrow night or not, but we shall see. I hope I will. And if I do, I should be on from about 8 PM UK time, 2000 hours UTC or GMT, or about an hour and a half ago. So a little bit of an early stream tonight, but shorter stream tonight, but I want to go cool off. So thank you everybody for watching, and I hope to see you again in the future. Bye for now.